I have an audience member's comment, actually, that I ask that you all respond to. Tax me, I plan to benefit, so why should I not contribute? Do people plan to get something for nothing? Okay. Tax me, I plan to benefit, so why should I not contribute? Do people plan to get something for nothing?
So I'm thinking this through and I'm interpreting that to mean that, and I hope I'm right, I'm interpreting that to mean that people shouldn't expect to get something for free, and that people do have to pay taxes, and people, the money has to come from somewhere. So, I guess that's true. Nothing comes for free. We should tax this community as minimally as possible. We all want to be comfortable, but like I said, I also want to make sure that someone shows up when I dial 911, and I want to make sure that the streets get paved, and I want to make sure all those things happen. So yes, the money has to come from somewhere.
On the topic of taxes, and I think I'm interpreting that kind of in the same vein as Brandy, that maybe that's in opposition to taxes, or they want to know what they're getting out of it. And the reason why I support a park levy over anything else right now is because I believe that investing in our parks and taking those as much as $800,000 out of the budget and allowing that $800,000 to be spread among the many departments who need it is an investment that you will see a return on. Mount Union is always recognized for a great return on investment of the kids who pay tuition there, and I want our residents to feel the same way about the tax dollars that they are investing in the city of Alliance. So I think a park levy, a limited park levy for a few years that is very targeted and you know exactly what you're getting, is our best option to fill the gap. And the reason why I support a park levy over, say, a general fund levy or something that is just for safety forces is because a park levy would be more narrowly tailored than anything else. Our general fund provides all kinds of services, things that you wouldn't even realize, and I didn't realize until I've been on city council. And our safety services, we have a lot of safety services. We have a fire department and a police department that do a lot of things that you might not even imagine. So I think a park levy would give the voters the best understanding of exactly what they would be getting out of paying additional tax money for a limited period of time. So that is the tax issue that I support, begrudgingly, but because I think it's a necessity and I think it's the best long-term solution for the city of Alliance.
Okay, if I take it, the way I took it too was that they're saying taxes are needed. Why should we not raise our taxes? This isn't a handout. Well, first off, we already pay one of the highest city tax rates in Ohio. 2% is on the higher end. I have buddies that live in other communities where it's only 1.5, 1.75. A quarter of a percent may not sound like a lot, but to people, as it is, we have a ton of poverty in this city, especially in wards 1 and 2, which I think totally get ignored all the way around, which is one thing I will not do. But it might not sound like $100 a year might not sound like a lot to like a lot of us, but there's people that $10 a month matter. Just like the trash bill, it's come out to where we're paying an extra $5 a month. It might not sound like a lot to everybody, but that's a lot to a lot of people. I know through my soccer community, we cater to the whole community, and probably half of the families in our soccer community are lower income, and that's why we keep our rates down. But if we even think about raising it $5, it might make a difference whether or not the kid plays soccer or they don't. I know a lot of people might have a hard time understanding that. And I think this is being really drawn out. Like this isn't going to eliminate our safety services. This isn't going to eliminate 911 because we don't raise taxes. It's all about we need to be fiscally responsible and start spending our money the right way. Again, I am even a park tax. So we're going to have a park tax, and I'm hearing it's going to go to all these other departments. How's that a park tax? Are you kidding me? If it's going to go to all these other departments, then it should be an income tax, which I'm against too, hike. So how does a park and recreational tax, I just heard here tonight, is going to help all these other departments? Why is it called a park tax? And if somebody can explain that to me.
Like I said in the beginning, I'm totally against taxes. There's a way we can cut our budget a little bit to fit stuff in. Like this year, as a prime example, wasn't any roads fixed this year. We all paid our taxes. Nothing was done. Still have more potholes. We still drive through more potholes. This winter, supposed to be a cold winter, it's going to get worse. So we don't need any more taxes. We need to find a way to spend the money we have now and cut the places where we need to cut.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a more specific question from a community member. How would you ensure that the funding of the streets department is sufficient enough to avoid the need to use chip and seal methods on residential streets?
Chip and seal, unfortunately, none of us likes it. We'll have to use it at some point just to get us through on some of our roads. They are pretty bad. But for funding the street part, we have to, like I said before, cut our waste that we have, from legal fees to unnecessary lawsuits against the city, stuff that we put ourselves into, or the administration put himself into. But let's find some way to fix that. Once we're there, we can just move money around where it needs to be reallocated to. But roads need to be at least one of our top priorities next year, because roads getting worse. We're not going to have much of it anywhere to drive, bring cars in.
Yes, I agree with Dave. We don't like chip and seal. It's something you see out in the country, like where my brother lives. Obviously, it's a fix right now, and it is, serving the purpose for the time being. But again, I think this all goes back to, again, I'm going to keep harping on taxes all evening here. It's all about where our money's going and spending it, not being fiscally irresponsible, being fiscally responsible. I'm sorry, but if you guys honestly think that a park levy is going to fix our streets overnight, then you're living in Disney World. It's not going to happen. If you guys think that raising the taxes is going to be the answer, then you know what? By all means, you shouldn't be voting for me and Dave, because that's not going to solve the city's problems by no means. What we are going to do, though, which I am referencing Dave because he is a friend of mine, and we've sat down, we've talked, had many talks about this. One thing we are going to do is we're going to work for you guys. We're going to fix the problems. We're not going to just sit there. We do have other jobs, but this isn't just going to be a part-time job for us. This is going to be a full-time job as well, and we will do what we have to do. We'll make the tough decisions, but one thing we will not do is raise taxes.
Well, I've yet to hear any solution other than raising taxes, and that's unfortunate because nobody likes taxes, and our streets are important. They are literally the bones of our city. It's how we get from point A to point B. If you're in an ambulance and they pick you up your house and you can't make it to the hospital because there's so many potholes and the streets are in such poor condition, then shame on the City of Alliance. There's no doubt about that. And it's true, we didn't pave a single street this year, but we don't have the money to do that. If you want a cop to respond when you dial 911, or you want a firefighter to come to your house when it's on fire, there are certain decisions that we had to make. There are certain services that take priority. And this year we decided that streets were not the priority given our financial situation. And I will tell you that as the Finance Committee chair, and having sat in those meetings and understood the conversation, and not just reading articles in the newspaper and making judgment calls, but actually being in the room, looking at the numbers and understanding the finances, we wanted to get people's attention. And not paving streets was a way of making sure people knew this is serious. And it's not for show. That's not the case. If we could have paved streets, we certainly would have, which is kind of how we get to chip and seal. Chip and seal is something that the engineer recommended several years ago. My first term on council, I was the chair of the Streets and Alleys Committee. And at the time, I kind of thought it was a test from then President John Benincasa. Because when you think about city council, at least my impression was those are the people you call when you hit a pothole and your rim is damaged. So I thought when I was assigned the Streets and Alleys Committee chair, my first term on council, that he was testing me. And he was. I have no doubt. Although he's not here to tell me that today, I have no doubt that that was a test. But it was a good test because I understood so much more about the streets, about what they cost, about how important it is to maintain them. And I heard the engineer give the pitch for chip and seal. And it's true that it started out as something that happens in the country. But you can go to Canton, 25 minutes away, and find a whole lot of chip and seal streets. And the problem with chip and seal is that it has to be done at the absolute best possible time. You have to chip and seal when the weather is really hot, when it can congeal all back together, and then you have to sweep the streets really well to get all of that loose gravel up. Because when you drive on a street and you see the loose gravel, you think this is a chip and seal disaster once again. But if we do it right and we follow the exact protocol that our engineer has outlined for us, chip and seal can be nice. It still won't be the beautiful blacktop that you see, but it will prevent your street from literally collapsing. Because when you chip and seal, you grind it down to the best base layer, and then you put a congealed, mush of gravel on top of it to make sure that it is a solid base. Now, we have to sweep up the extra gravel, that's true. But chip and seal is not something that I decided was a cheap way to pave some streets. It was something that came from the engineer, that was based on his education and his experience and his collaboration with other municipalities. Because chip and seal is cheaper, that's true. It's not as attractive. I would much rather have a nice asphalt black street, but we are trying to do the best we can. And chip and seal was one of the mechanisms where we thought we could still address the structural problems of a street without just skipping over it. And as you can see this year, when we didn't pave any roads, we didn't chip and seal any, we didn't blacktop any, it makes a difference. And so streets have to be a priority. And when I spoke about the park levy, perhaps I wasn't clear, but the park levy will dedicate, as much as perhaps $800,000 specifically to the parks. There will be an additional tax that you pay that will go directly to the parks, and that will remove the Parks Department from our general fund. So when we're in the budgeting process and we have to say, all right, this $800,000 chunk of money, this is our Parks Department budget, we won't have to do that because it will be funded by the taxpayers for a period of time. So with that $800,000 that we were going to put into the parks, we could spend that $800,000 perhaps partially on police, partially on fire, partially on streets. We could make those other investments and spread that money among the many deserving departments who need it, the least of which is obviously not the Streets and Alleys Department. So, maybe I was misunderstood, but the parks levy that I am an advocate for will allow us to do more while still prioritizing the department that I believe is most likely to attract people to Alliance. Because I don't know about you, but if I was thinking about moving somewhere, I would rather have a city that has lots of great parks and lots of great green spaces and a place where I can go get fresh air and take my dog for a run, that maybe has some bad streets and some potholes. Because frankly, we live in Ohio, and those are always going to be a problem. And we need better solutions. People talk about putting beet juice on the roads instead of salt, because salt is so damaging to the streets. So that's another thing we can do, is we can adjust how much salt we're putting down on the streets. The less salt we put down, the less corrosive it is to the streets. If I could talk to Mother Nature and convince her to stop doing the freeze and thaw, that would help too. But it's my opinion as a city council person and as somebody who has spent a lot of time thinking about streets, thinking about finances, when the engineer is telling me this is the best solution we have, this is how we can make the biggest impact, make the streets the safest, I am inclined to follow the engineer's recommendation, because I am not an engineer, I am not an expert in streets and alleys, and that is literally what we pay him to do. So long as that continues to be his recommendation, I will support that. But, if the residents told me I'd rather not have my street paved than have it chip and sealed, I understand that too, and we can make that accommodation. So, if your street is on a list to be chip and sealed and you'd rather not have it, call your city council person, because we can make that adjustment for you.
Yeah, I too am not hearing any other solutions other than additional taxes. And whether it's a park levy or some other levy that city council ends up considering and getting on the ballot, that will free up general fund money that we can hopefully dedicate to streets as well as everything else. I just keep hearing we're going to eliminate wasteful spending. And I'm telling you, I've been there right by Julie at every one of these meetings this year, and I've looked at the same budget, and I've evaluated, and I've had coffee with more people than I can count. I've talked to city employees. I've talked to supervisors in the city departments. There's not a lot of wasteful spending happening. And if we can make one thing clear tonight, I hope it's that.